Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial. My name's ThaTimster. Today I'm going to be going over part 3 of how to make enemy AI in the Blender game engine. So, in part 1 we went ahead and gave our characters some animations, in part 2 we gave the gun some animations, and we also set up this patrolling system. So if I press P, there we go, a player walks up to the first cube, or first point, turns around and then walks to the next one, and he basically continually walks around in a circle. So before we go any further ahead, if you haven't done part 1 or part 2 of the Enemy AI tutorial series, then I highly recommend you do so. However, if you don't want to, there will be a link to the starting.blend in the description if you want to go ahead and get that. So if we go to the states that our enemy will have, we can see idle is just walking around the map, and basically we have already done that, so we can put an X beside that to mark that we have finished it. The next one is alert, and that is looking around searching for the player. So I'm going to make this window a little bigger like so. I'm going to turn down the timeline so we have more space to work in, and right now if we click this little plus sign here, it is on state 1 at the moment. Right here, the visible, basically the one we're editing, and initial is the one it starts on. So initial you probably want to keep on the first one, but we are going to go ahead to the second one, and this is going to be the alert state. And basically on the alert state, what we want our character to do is we're going to add an always sensor. I guess that's going to be on true. Then over here on our enemy rig, we'll add an action, and I'm going to call it alert, like so. Then we'll select our enemy rig action, and then I'm going to select my rig, and we can see the alert animation starts at frame 130. So I'm going to select my movement cube, and it's going to start at 130. Then we select the rig again, like so, and we scroll along to see when it finishes. So frame 230, so exactly 100. So we'll select the movement cube again and do 230 as the end frame. So if our player is alert, then he'll constantly be doing this movement. Then the next thing I'm going to do is on my gun, I'm going to add an action as well. And here it's going to be gun action, and the same thing, it's going to start at 130 and end at 230. Then I'm also going to join it up to the same and sensor. So this first one I think is just walk, so I'll call it walk, and the second one is alert. So alert like so. Okay, I'll minimize those ones, and basically what we need is something to trigger it from state 1 and move it to state 2. So I'll go back on state 1, and there is no real trigger at the moment, so here I'm going to add a near sensor. But what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to add a message sensor. Now the reason I'm going to add a message sensor is basically if our player walks on something that the enemy can hear. So for example, maybe if this is say in a warehouse or something, and you might have some, I don't know, loose cords or some cans on the floor, or something that will make a rattling noise that the enemy will hear, it will then make them aware of that. So it isn't just when your player is close to the enemy that they become aware. To join those two together, I'm going to add an OR controller. So this could be either or, and I'll join them both up. So when either of these is true, then over here on the enemy movement, we're going to set it to state 2, like so. Okay, and now we want a decent distance. So a good distance might be, I'll just have a look at this. I think this is about 8 and 5, and maybe we'll make it 15. 15 might be a good distance. Okay, and reset distance, I'm going to make 17, just make sure that's above 15, and then I'm going to, for the property, we don't have a player yet, but just in case we do, I'm just going to put in the property player, then I'll minimize that, and for the message here, I'm just going to put in noise. So basically, if you have, say, another collision cube or something here, and your player collides with it, then it will send out the message noise, and obviously our enemy here will have that message sensor attached to it. Okay, cool, so we'll minimize all those, like so, and we'll move back along to state 2. Now basically we don't want our enemy to stay alert the entire time. So basically to fix that, what we're going to do is add a timer system. So if nothing happens for a certain amount of time, the enemy will just forget about it and think it's just, a figment of their imagination or something, and then continue back to state 1. So to do that, on the enemy movement, I'm going to add a state, and this is just going to set it back to state 1 if the timer has run out. Then on this side, I'm going to add a game property. I'm going to call it timer. And this is going to be an integer, and this is how long we want our time to be. Maybe we'll set it to 660. Then what I'm going to do is on my enemy movement, I'm going to add a property, and this is going to add to the property timer -1. Now this is also going to be joined to the always sensor, so yeah, it's just going to be constantly happening while the player is on state 2. And now when this property is equal to 0, then we're going to add an AND controller, join that up to that, and join that back to state 1. So after 6 seconds, it will just go back to state 1 and everything will be normal again. Well, at least for the enemy. So we'll minimize all those. There we go. Now, I guess we should probably call this one, so we'll just do -1, or timer -1. And this one here we'll call state 1. There we go. That's fine. Okay, so minimize all of those. Now I think that is basically the alert done. However, what we do need for a player to properly be alert is we need a sort of almost vision field or vision cone of what they can see. So I'm going to press Shift S, cursor to center, then I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to add myself a cone for the player's vision. Now down here you'll see a little arrow, so we'll click on that and that'll bring it up, and this is our current cone. So 32 vertices is a bit much, so I might halve that to 16, or even 12. Maybe we can find our cone to see what it looks like. So maybe something like that. 12 should be fine. Then once I've added my cone and set it to 12 vertices, I'm going to press S to scale, and I'm going to make it nice and big, so something like that. Then I'm going to press RX, rotate on the x-axis, and then GY, or just drag it on the green axis, and I'm going to move it up to round about where the player's vision would be, so something like that. Okay, so that is a fairly large field of vision. If you wanted to for your game, you could, I don't know, put a spotlight there so the player knows if they've been seen or not. But yeah, I'm just going to move it something like that. And this is going to be set to a sensor, and this is going to detect actors, and it will just detect the player, obviously. It's going to be invisible, and it will have collision bounds, and it's going to be a cone. There we go. So I'm going to hold down Shift and select the movement cube, then I'll press Control P and parent. So now if we go to our timeline between 130 and 230, you see our player turns, but his vision cone does not. So before I do anything else, I'm going to select the vision cone, and I'm going to call it vision cone. Then I'm going to press numpad 7 to go into top view, scroll in a bit, and then we need to go to frame 130, frame 130 like so, and then I'm going to press I and insert location rotation. Then we'll select our rig, and the next keyframe is frame 160, so we'll select our cone here, and we'll just align it to match the player's head, like so. So RZ, rotate on the Z axis, GX, and then RZ again, GX, and maybe RZ a bit more, GX, GY, move it into his face a bit more, GX as well, and we just want to line it up like so. Okay, something like that should be fine, although maybe even just a bit more, something like that I think represents it a bit better. So GX, and we'll just line it up with his face again. Okay, something like that. Then once you're happy with it, press I, insert location rotation again, and the next frame, if we select our rig, is frame 200, so I'm going to go to frame 200 like so, and his head is looking over here now, so we'll press numpad 7, R to rotate, and we want to rotate it in the same relative direction as his head, which is somewhere around here, so somewhere like that, and then GX, GY, GX again, and right in the middle, like so. Then I'm going to press I, insert location rotation, and there we go. Now we only have the last part left, and to do that, I'm just going to go to frame 130. Then in this window, the graph editor, I'm just going to press A to deselect everything, then Control K, and then I'm going to press Shift D, GX 100. And that's going to move it from 130 to 230, and it'll just make a duplicate of the same keyframe. So it's basically seamless the whole time. Okay, and if you notice, right here, in between both, we have a sort of almost glitch where it goes into the player. So if that really was an issue for you, we can go ahead and fix that as well. So I think 180, so it may as well, numpad 7, and we'll just push it back to the front of his head like so. And we'll press I, insert location rotation, there we go. Okay, and now here I'm going to add an action. It's going to be vision cone action. It's going to start from frame 130 and it's going to end at frame 230, like so. And this is basically just the detection cone, which will send our player into attacking mode. So once I've done that, I'm going to hold down shift and select our player movement cube, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select state 2. And it's always going to be doing this along with the looking side to side action as well. Okay, and on state 1, just to reset it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an action on our vision cone. So this first one's just called side to side, and this one is just going to reset it so it's looking forward. So this one we'll just call it reset, and this just starts on 130 and ends at 130, so it's just doing the first frame of the animation, not moving anything. So vision cone, and on state 1, make sure you're on state 1, it's going to be always doing that. So do we have an always sensor? I don't think we do, so I'm going to add an always sensor and an and controller, join the two up, and then I'm going to join this to our vision cone. We don't want side to side, we want reset. So there we go, we'll minimize that, and there we go, we can minimize these as well. And now back to state 2. If our vision cone here, I'm going to add a collision sensor, and when it collides with property player, then what I'm going to do is add an and controller under the enemy movement, join it up to the collision for the vision cone, and here we're going to actually to enemy movement, we're going to add a state, join the two up, and this is going to be to state 3. We could do that as our attacking state. However, if we look back at the states that our enemy should have, right here, so we have idle, then we have alert, and then the next one is taking cover. So maybe that will be number 3, and attacking will be number 4. So the first thing he does will probably be attack as soon as he sees the enemy. So he's going to go straight to state 4, and we might just call this attack, like so. And then we'll minimize it, and this one's going to be idle, I guess. Okay, now one more thing I'm going to do is on our enemy movement, I'm going to add a message sensor, and this time it's going to be for gunshot. So as soon as our enemy hears a gunshot, he's going to go straight to state 3 and he's going to run to take cover. So here I'm going to add an AND controller, join it up to the message, and the next thing I'm going to do on the enemy movement, add another state, and this is going to be state 3 this time. So attack is state 4 and this one's state 3. So we'll call this one cover, like so. And I think that should be it. So if we go along to our states here, we've done the first one, idle and alert, looking around for the player. That's basically done now, so we can put an X beside that. I'm going to go back here to state 1, and I'm going to go to state 1 on our enemy movement. Now basically what we want, if our player does decide to shoot from a long range, then obviously we want a player here to run to cover. So to do that, on our enemy movement, we're going to add a message, and this is going to be a gunshot as well, the same as on state 2. And if it does go to gunshot, then we're going to add a state. Might need to add a new one here. So I'm going to select enemy movement, like so. And then if gunshot does happen, then I'm going to add a state here. And what this is going to do, we'll join that up to that. And this is going to set it to state 3 again. So just find cover as soon as possible. Okay, so that should work for state 1 and state 2 now. The first thing I'm going to do is press Shift A, and I'm going to add an obstacle for him to hide behind. So possibly cube, and we'll put that over here. I'll press S, and then SY maybe, move it up like so, and it's just sort of an obstacle for him to hide behind. So maybe something like that. Then I'm going to go along and call this obstacle, like so. Now basically if our player is alert or he's just in the idle state and he does need to run and find cover, what he's probably going to do is, say he's in the position he's starting right now, he's going to turn around and he's going to run straight towards the cover, and in fact he will just be running into the front of it the whole time. So to avoid that from happening, what we're going to do is add a navigation mesh. So what is a navigation mesh? Basically if you go into the scene here, navigation mesh, what it does is it adds a mesh for the floor, and then it cuts holes in the mesh wherever there is an obstacle, for example this cube right here. So what that will do is then what we can do with our player is have him run around where the holes are and run to a certain property. So what I'm going to do is pretend this is my main sort of map, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a texture just so it looks different from the navigation mesh. So I'm going to click new texture, image or movie, and we'll click UV, click open, go to downloads, and I'm just going to use a random texture from CG textures, so maybe just some concrete, if we can find some there, something like that. Then I'm going to press tab, U, and unwrap. Then I'm going to go to the UV image editor, press S to scale, and I'm going to make it nice and big like so, just so we sort of have a base mesh to start off with. What I now want is just obstacles lying around the map for my player to hide behind. Then I'm going to select my one obstacle here, and I'm going to press Shift D, GX, move the same one over here, maybe rotate it a bit, press S to scale, make it bigger, then Shift D, GY, we'll put one over here, RZ to rotate again, Shift D, GX, move it over here, rotate it a bit more, Shift D, GY, move it over this way a bit, Shift D, GY again, RZ, and we just want random objects littered around where our player is going to be walking. So something like that, just random objects for him to hide behind. Maybe we should put one more here, so Shift D, GX, then I'm going to press S and scale, like so. Okay, so now I have all my objects set up, so I'm going to select the floor, hold down Shift, and select the objects I want with it, like so. So just the obstacles which I want my player to be able to run around. These routines aren't really a problem, they should be fine. Hold down Shift and select the ground to make sure it's yellow. Then I'm going to go to Navigation Mesh under Scene and click Build Navigation Mesh. So there we go, it will do some calculations and then it will build a navigation mesh. So as you can see around the obstacles here, it's just cut out holes and it's put little bits on top of them like so. So if we press tab, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete these top parts because we don't want our player running on them. So just delete the vertices for it. And here I'm going to do the same. Just delete them. And there we go. So maybe this might be faster if I go into face select mode and just select two faces, delete, and do that for each one. Oh. Delete those as well, delete these ones, and to stop us being able to see right through, what we might want to do is turn this option on. There we go. And then we'll just select these two, X to delete, and there we go. That's all of them done. So back to object mode, then I'm going to select my navigation mesh here, I'm going to go to the physics and make sure it's on navigation mesh. Okay, so now that we have our navigation mesh sorted out, basically what we could do here on state 1, we could replace the current system, which is just using track 2 and motion, with, if we go to the actuators, we could replace them with steering. However, the steering, what we'd basically do is we'd hit the first one and then it'd snap to the second one, and would have very jolty sort of instant movements. So right now if we press P, you can see he smoothly turns around, even just starting out to swivel around here, he turns around nice and smoothly. So I think for now we'll leave that system in. However, we may come in later and change that system back to steering. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be setting up the state 4, so the attacking state. So we'll sort out the taking cover and stuff, we'll do that next tutorial. However, I just want to get the attacking done and out of the way. The first thing I'm going to do is on my enemy movement, I'm going to add an always sensor. It's going to be on a true pulse, and basically what our enemy is going to be doing is he's going to be running at the player. So enemy rig action, it's going to be running. It's going to start at frame, I think it's 235. Yep, so 235 to start off with, and it finishes at 280. And then I'm going to add an AND controller on the movement, join that up to that, and join that up to the enemy rig. Now we want our gun doing the same movement. Gun here, we want a running animation for that as well. So we'll do gun action, and that's going to start at 235 and end at 280. Okay, so if we go to our states here, you'll notice for attacking, when he's near cover, we want him to stay, but when he's in the open, we want him to run at the player. So how we're going to go about doing this is on each box you see, we're going to be putting collision sensors behind them, obviously, so our player will run towards them, and if he is already behind them, he'll be colliding with them, obviously, the whole time, and then all he can do is get up and fight against the normal player. So I'm going to add a collision, and this is going to be when it collides with cover on a true pulse. I'm going to add a enemy movement, join that up to that, and what he's going to be doing is on the enemy rig, it's basically just going to make him look upwards. So this is just, I guess, stand up, and this will be from the taking cover animation. So when he ran to the cover and then he ducks down behind it, we just want him ducking up. If we scroll along here, he ducks behind cover like so, and then if we reverse this animation, he'll get up. So this finishes at frame 310 and starts at frame 280, I think. So here I'm going to add my enemy rig action. It's going to start at 310, I think it was, and end at 280. So it's going to play it backwards. Okay, and then minimize that, and minimize that as well. We also need a gun action. So I think this one was running, so we'll call it running. And then I'm going to add another action, and this is going to be joined up to this one. This one is going to be called stand up as well. Then I'm here going to select gun action, and here I'm going to be putting in 310 as well, and 280. So there we go. Now we have the standing up, so if he's behind the cover, he'll stand up like so, and attack obviously, and if he isn't behind the cover, he'll just run at the player. But at the moment, it's only playing the running animation. Here I'm going to take advantage of the steering system. So that is using the navigation mesh, obviously. So I'm going to select my movement cube to the enemy movement on state 4. I'm going to add a steering actuator. This is going to be target object, and we'll select our player object, so we'll do that later. The navigation mesh is just called Navmesh, so we'll use that. And running is going to be pretty fast, so maybe a velocity of 8, like so. Okay, and turn speed, we could do 120, maybe we'll just tune that down to 100. Okay, and it's going to be on the y-axis, I think it is. Yep, y-axis is forward, so we'll change it to y, like so. Okay, and it's going to be always doing that. However, if our player is colliding with it, we don't want it always to be doing that. So actually what I'm going to do is add a collision. It's going to be almost the same as this one, so on true and cover, except this time it's going to be inverted. Okay, and currently with Blender there's a bug. If you have lots and lots of logic bricks like this, it will start connecting them if you don't name them properly. For example, here I've got two AND controllers named exactly the same, so maybe we should call this one 1 and 2, or maybe just AND 1 and then AND 2, because if they're both the same name and you delete one, it will delete the other. The same thing with this always sensor. If your one is just always and nothing else, just make sure you rename it anything that isn't normal, just like so, and now we can delete it. Then this inverted cover collision, I'm going to join up to the first one. So if it's not colliding with cover, so he hasn't found cover, then he'll constantly be seeking, and then later we're going to put in our player. One more thing though is if we go to state 2, you'll notice when our timer is equal to 0, it will set it back to state idle. However, we haven't reset our timer, so I'm going to add a property here, and it's going to assign timer back to 660 like before. And it's going to do it when it sets it to state idle, like so. Okay, minimize all of those, and now if I press P, there we go, walking along to the next one. If I set the initial state, however, to be state 2, so it starts off on state 2. If we press P now, you'll see he's alert, and he is going side to side. There is a bit of a bug with his legs, so we might need to sort that out next time. However, you can see, walking around, our timer will be going down constantly, and then once it reaches 0, he just continues on his normal path. So, there we go. That is our enemy movement done for this episode. Next episode, we're going to be going over the taking cover system, and we'll also be adding our player. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, be sure to leave a like or a comment. If you do, that stuff is greatly appreciated. So I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys in the next video.